What's going on, guys? Another installment of a Red Sox video here. Uh, the weekend just wrapped up. The Red Sox lost to Tampa Bay today. They fall to 62-66. 8 losses behind Toronto and Seattle for the second and third wild card. So, as I said in my last video, this week was pretty much their last gasp at a chance to make the playoffs, and that was going to have them having to take 2 out of 3 from Toronto and probably sweeping the Rays or at worst winning the series, which they did this weekend, but they got swept by the Blue Jays, and that was pretty much to me where the season was all but over. So let's get right into the Jays series. You know, the first game they get killed 9-3. They have an inning where they give up 8 runs with 2 outs. Josh Winkowski pitched, and it just went to tell me just like how different the Red Sox and Blue Jays are, you know, in terms of how good each one is this year. Toronto's a significant superior team to the Red Sox, and they demonstrated it all series long. But the thing is that it was a series that was still winnable for the Red Sox. So they get their butts kicked the first game. The second and third games, Boston, I'm going to say should have won both games. They were both 1-run defeats. The second game of the series, the Red Sox, in this series, the second, third game, they could not get a clutch hit to put themselves ahead. Or it wasn't even a matter of getting a clutch hit. Sometimes all they needed was a sacrifice fly. Couldn't get it done. Second game of the series, they have the bases loaded in both the 7th and 8th innings, granted with 2 outs. Can't get a run in. In the 10th inning, they give up a run with the man on second, but only 1 run comes in. So in the bottom of the 10th, they had a chance to tie the game themselves with a man on second, nobody out, and they couldn't get it done with the heart of their order. The third game of the series, they had a runner on second and third with 2 outs in the 7th inning. They don't get him in. In the 8th and 9th innings, in the 8th inning, they had a leadoff triple with nobody out, and they couldn't bring in the run. And in the 9th inning, they had runners on second and third, nobody out, and they couldn't score. And the same thing happened that night as well. In the 10th inning, they couldn't bring in the tying run to continue playing against the Jays. So three losses, 2 terrible losses, and basically that was the final nail in the coffin for me. You know, it really didn't matter what they did against the Tampa Bay Rays after they got swept by Toronto. Really couldn't afford to get swept, and you know, losing the games in the fashion that they did just kind of made me think, you know what, this team flat out does not deserve to be in the playoffs. So, you know, I'm kind of at the point where I'm okay with October coming this year and the Red Sox not being a participant in the MLB postseason because they don't deserve it. You know, there's way better teams. I think it's great that Seattle's going to make the playoffs this year. I think it's fun that, you know, they're going to see their team in the playoffs for the first time in a very long time and hopefully get a home series. You know, the fans of the Mariners haven't seen their team play a home playoff series, I think, since 2001. So that's awesome for them. Toronto, I have no ill will towards. I mean, obviously they've beaten the Red Sox to death this year and they're a division rival, but I think it's a great thing that, you know, their fans up there will get to get to see their team. And this was a team, you know, that a lot of fans expected to win the East. You know, the Toronto Blue Jays were hyped up to be a potential World Series team. And while they haven't played all that consistent this year, they're still a very dangerous team in the playoffs. And I think they'll be a very, very dangerous threat to Houston and New York if they can get past the wild card round. And the Red Sox they're not in the same class as these teams. You know, as much as it pains me to say it, they're just not. And yeah, the Red Sox did manage to win 2 out of 3 against Tampa Bay this weekend. Had a chance to sweep the Rays. And listen, they're 8 games out with, I don't know, the Red Sox are 60-66. Is that what I said? 62-66. So not too many games left. I think less than 40 by my math. So to make up that kind of ground, it's not going to happen. And you know, but they're professionals. They should still be thinking that they should win every game, you know, to try and make some noise. And Nick Pivetta goes out today and he gives up 5 runs in 5 innings. I mean, it's not Nick Pivetta's fault. I mean, that's who he is. He's a very mediocre pitcher. And is he good enough to be in a rotation of a good team? Sure. He was in their rotation last year and they made the playoffs. I mean, this is not a guy who doesn't deserve to be a starting pitcher in the big leagues. He definitely does. He needs to be a back end of the rotation kind of guy. That's what he is, and that's fine. He started the second game of the season for the Red Sox this year. He was their number 2 pitcher. Now, I know they had some injuries, but he was still looked on as a guy that was going to be one of their key pieces going into this year out of the rotation. He had a very good postseason last year out of the bullpen. But Nick Pivetta he was very mediocre this year. Actually, worse than mediocre. He was kind of bad. He had a very good first half of the year where he kept the Red Sox afloat, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that he had a lot of good matchups. If you look at his splits, he pitched against a lot of bad teams in that stretch where the Red Sox went on that crazy run and got back into things. But a lot of that had to do with him. But again, it had to do with their schedule and the weak opponents they played. As soon as he faced good teams like the Yankees or, Tampa Bay today, Toronto, teams of that nature, he didn't pitch very well. So not Nick Pavetta's fault, but just kind of an indictment on the Red Sox management that this was a guy that they leaned on to be one of their front end starters, and he just isn't. He isn't deserving to be that. He's not capable of having that role of on at least a team that's thinking about making the playoffs. So that was kind of a crappy way to end the series. The Red Sox go to Minnesota for I believe 3 games starting tomorrow, and then they come home to face the Texas Rangers for 4. Again, they're 62 and 66. They're done, and I hope Fenway Park doesn't fill up. I hope the Red Sox fans say, you know what, you guys have been a major disappointment. We have football right around the corner. I'm going to support the Patriots, not the Red Sox. Not me personally. I don't care about the Patriots, but Red Sox fans, most of them do. I hope Fenway Park is a ghost town and no one goes to the games, because management needs to see that this has been an extremely underwhelming year, an extremely disappointing year. All injuries aside, this team should not be in last place. This team should not be 8 games out of a playoff spot in a year where they expanded the playoffs. 6 teams out of the American League make it. There's no excuse for them to be 8 games out at this stage. A few games out would still be a significant underachievement, but they're done. They're done. You're pretty crazy if you think they still have a chance. They'd have to go on a crazy run, which they're just not going to do. So that's all I have to say in this video, guys. Kind of a quick video here. Again, what's there to say? The Red Sox had to go 6-0 probably on this homestand. At worst 5-1, and they went 2-4. So under 500 again. Just disappointment. So a couple of roster moves they made late tonight. They DFA'd Austin Davis and Hirokazu Sawamura. See you later. Those guys were, Austin Davis, he was kind of a low leverage reliever. Sometimes he would be the bullpen starter of games where they wanted to give their regular starters a day off. And Sawamura had better stuff, but had a lot of control issues, and he did throw hard, but sometimes he would just get knocked around, and I have no problem seeing him leave. We'll see what they do with the minor leaguers, if they call a couple arms up that have some promise, and maybe they can get some major league action just to kind of prepare themselves for next year. But disappointing, guys. I don't know if I'll be back with another video for the next couple of weeks. I have some things going on, and it just seems, unless they really go on some crazy run to get back in this, there's really nothing else to say other than what's already been said. This was a team that many people, including myself, thought was going to make a lot of noise, not only for the division. I thought they had a chance to outlast the Jays and win the division. I thought they had a chance to make some noise in the playoffs, and I thought that, they would need some help at the trade deadline, but I thought they had a chance to potentially be in the World Series. This was a team that was in Game 6 of the ALCS last year. Maybe they played over their heads, and this is more closer to where they should have been last year. And maybe we overestimated where the Red Sox were going to be at the end of this season, because they played like a team that, like I said, does not deserve to be in the playoffs, and frankly doesn't even – I don't think that they're on the same playing field as a lot of their opponents. They did play the Jays tough this week. They did take a series against the Rays, but in a long series, I just don't think the Red Sox would outlast any of those teams. And, against Houston or New York, and I know they played the Yankees all right this year, but I just feel like if they've got into a best of 5 or best of 7 against those teams, I'd be very surprised if they win it. In baseball, a lot of things happen. A lot of randomness can happen, and certainly sometimes the best team doesn't always win. But the bottom line is it's pointless even talking about it because they're not going to be in the playoffs this year, and it's time to move on from 2022 and look to see what's going to happen next year. All I'll say is if this is my last video, this is going to be one of the most interesting off seasons in a long time for the Red Sox, given the competitors they have in not only the American League, but specifically their division. Baltimore is here to stay. They are not the cellar dwellers that, you're going to go 14-3 against anymore. I mean, this is a team that has to be respected, and, they've beaten the Red Sox pretty much all season long this year. So they're not going to get any worse. In fact, their ownership has said they anticipate increasing their payroll. So with a young core and some decent young players, it'll be interesting to see if they can convince some pretty good free agents to go and sign there with the promise of, yeah, we're here to compete, for the next few years. Toronto's not going anywhere. This is a team that I think for the next 2 to 3 years is going to be an offensive machine, and they're going to need to add some starting pitching. I think that's been one of their weak spots, but they have a good bullpen. They've got a good offense. They're going to be very difficult to deal with. Tampa Bay always seems to find a way, as we've seen that since pretty much going back the last 15 years. I mean, they've had a couple bad years in there, but for the most part, they always find a way to get right back into the mix. And they're never a team you can count out. And the New York Yankees, I mean, they've kind of fallen off the last few weeks, and they have a lot of changes that may be made after this year, but it's the Yankees. I mean, counting the Yankees out is always a foolish thing. So it'll be an interesting offseason for the Red Sox, an interesting offseason for Chaim Bloom, and it'll be interesting to see where they're going and what direction they're going to take, because I don't think that ownership can afford another disappointing year like this. And I think Chaim Bloom, as much as this is not entirely his fault, this is an erratic ownership that fires people after a couple of bad years as PR starts to become an issue. Ben Sherrington won a World Series in 2013. He was fired at the end of 2015. It wouldn't surprise me if, as much of a success as 2021 was, if Chaim Bloom, if we're in the same position as they are next year, as they are today, if Chaim Bloom is, getting talked about being fired. So he might have to look a little bit beyond his own methods and say, you know what, I'm in a big market. I might have to sign some free agents and give out some contracts that I'm not necessarily comfortable with just to keep his job. And it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do. And as of right now, if you're the diehard Red Sox fans, you're going to watch the games and see some of these young players like Brian Bello pitching tomorrow against the Twins. It's that stuff to check out. But other than that, there's really no reasons to flip on Nesson for the rest of the year, because most of these games will be meaningless. Like I said, and barring a crazy run in which they rattle off, 13 out of 14, and they, find their way to be like 3 or 4 out. Even if they did that, that's the thing. I think they'd still be 3 or 4 out. So that's all I have to say, guys. I'm being a little redundant. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you when I'm back on here. I don't know when that will be, but I've enjoyed making these videos, and I'll talk to you soon.